We love you. We love you. We love you. And that's the way we like it. We like it. We love it. Oh, what's up in Soccer We Trust YouTube fam? This time, we are talking about a game for the U.S. men's national team as they took on a very lively Colombia team. So we have a lot to talk about, obviously, in the 0-0 draw. So hit like and subscribe. And let's get after it. Yes. What is up, everybody? Welcome to Ante Razzo's favorite podcast in Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy Trash Can Cream Cheese Conrad, also known as Jim, alongside Hollywood Harry Heath Pearce. And at some point, Charlie Chuck Ryan Zimmerman Davies will be joining us as well. Now, the 2 January camp games are in the books, Heath, after an exciting 90 minutes against Colombia, 0-0. But that's not what we're talking about. We also have some great news for the 2024 Copa America. We also, Weston McKennie, potentially heading to Leeds United States of America as well. And apparently Claudio Reyna announced that he was leaving Austin FC. We're going to touch upon all that stuff. But first, we got to get into the game. So, Heath, I'm coming to you first while Charlie gets all set and ready to go and looking all comfortable in front of his wood paneling.
Yeah.
Tell me about your overall thoughts about the 90 minutes we just witnessed between the U.S. and Colombia.
All right, I'll do it. But once you get to Charlie, I'm going to need him to address this hat thing he's got going on right now. Because it's not it's like Jimmy when he wore the hat for the first time. I haven't seen Charlie in a hat in a bit. But yeah, look, I think again, it's a really weird thing because I'm not taking this stance because it's the easy one, but I think that most of these players are not ready for our U.S. men's national team yet. Our full team.
They're not ready for prime time. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say that's the case.
Oh my God, however, that is so outlandish.
I can't believe.
However, I know it's a boring take. However, I think that there were some players like a Paxton Aronson who I look at and I go, man, I actually like that. John Tolkien. There are moments where I'm like, okay, I can see where the upside is going to be in a player like that. I look at players and it's I guess it's more interesting because we watch them through the lens of their club teams, right? We watch them all season long in Major League Soccer or wherever they're plying their trade at the moment, and you go, well, of course they're better than the average, right? But then you get them into the international level and you see the games a little bit faster, a little more physical, a little bit different style of play, and it's just nice to see some of these elements come together just to see what the future could look like. Because again, this pipeline of January camp players is not even the full pipeline of players, right? When we talk about more players coming into the fold, from a Kevin Paredes to a Taylor Booth who had a fantastic weekend, things like that. So it's just more of like an assessment of the player pool and like who is actually going to be knocking on the door, because we're going to easily over the next 2 years talk about 2026. There's somebody we've never even talked about that's going to be in the national team, and that's true. But we're going to have to start identifying them at some point. I think this is a good opportunity to do so.
Okay, Chuck, before I get your overall thoughts, I just want to say that Anthony Hudson, the interim manager, who looks like he'll probably be in charge for a little bit here as we try to figure out our coaching situation, he went with an experienced starting 11. And the 5 players that are on this January camp roster that represented us at the World Cup all started in this game, and they're all on the spine of the team. You got Sean Johnson, you got Aaron Long, Walker Zimmerman, Kellen Acosta, and Jesus Ferreira. Those are the 5. And it was clear they probably thought this Colombia team was going to be better than Serbia, and I think we could all agree that they were, even though we lost that game and we drew this one. I still, though, am kind of pissed at Anthony Hudson. I don't need to see Aaron Long and Zimmerman as a center back partnership. The fact that Jalen Neal came in as a sub and Sam Rogers came in as a sub as a center back completely pisses me off. Like, just start those dudes. Just start them. Sink or swim time, baby. Just start those dudes. That's how we're going to know. We know about Zimmerman and Long. Like, I understand having Sean, even though I would have rather seen somebody different, but it's fine. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
You have a goalkeeper
Hold on, Charlie. Hold on, Jimmy. But out of actual like fairness, if I sent you or say Chuck on trial to a club, right, and they said we're going to try, we're going to assess you over 30 minutes, but I'm going to put you with the reserves. I'm going to put you next to somebody who's also trialing. Do you think that you would be able to control enough of what you can control to be as good as you can? Or would you be like, no, I want to play next to the good guy. I want to be next to the guy who knows what he's doing over here so I can be like, focus on me. I mean, wouldn't you? I mean, I guess that wasn't actually the case. Well,
so
end,
listen,
but like
you sandwich them then. You have Sean Johnson behind him with experience, Kellen Acosta in front. And I know that you have Tolkien on one side and DeJuan Jones on the other, and it's a very inexperienced back line at that point. Okay, maybe one of the center backs. Maybe you get Sam Rogers to start. We didn't need to see them for the 15th. We know what they bring, and so I was just a little disappointed. I thought maybe one of them was hurt, not training well, whatever, and that's why they didn't start. Then they come on as subs. I'm like, what the hell are we even doing? This is about evaluating these guys. I get your point. It's taken. I respect it. Charlie, I want to hear from you.
I absolutely love when Jim wants to go on a rant and he is heated. That pumps me up. You get my blood going. What did we expect? Honestly, what did we expect from this January camp? It was so last minute with all the pieces of the puzzle thrown into disarray. So for me, I know I want to focus on the positives, right? Because it's so easy to talk about everything that's happening around this team and it's thrown together so last minute. So if I'm looking at the two matches, there weren't too many players that said, I've shown the potential to be successful at this level. Now, there was no one that was going to say, I'm ready for this level. I'm ready for a camp with Christian Pulisic and Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie and so on. I think if you're looking at players to say, man, if Jalen Neal gets minutes with the Galaxy all year, which I think he's ready for, he deserves. The Galaxy backline is not great. So for a young up-and-coming player with a lot of potential, he's shown me he's ready to play with the Galaxy. That's a great step. In terms of Cade Cowell, I think it's not a surprise that he has a bunch of potential and talent because he's got the speed and
but he's got to show it over a season. I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that.
He's got to sharpen up his technical skills
and be more consistent. And be more consistent.
Yes.
Right.
DeJuan Jones, another intriguing player. I think, again, he needs to sharpen up his skills, more of the technical aspect and the delivery because he's right-footed playing on the left. So maybe I know there are a couple of Bundesliga clubs interested. Maybe that's what's going to take him to the next level is getting an opportunity overseas. But he's got to deliver consistently with the Revolution before that happens. Zendejas, yes, but it was such a small window of what he could do, right?
Right.
Yes, it's encouraging, but it's not to say, hey, this is a player that's going to displace any of the options that we have currently. Maybe he might be in the mix, but come on. I think Slonina is another player. Again, potential. Better than Matt Turner? No chance. Not even close. And you could even throw Zach Steffen, Ethan Horvath. He's not there yet, but potentially could be amazing and fantastic. So shout out to Tim Hendricks in the comments section. Coach Davies, maybe nice, might need to get out there at some point. But they are who we thought they were, right? So from that standpoint, I'm not disappointed because my expectations were not high.
Right.
So
no, they had everything to gain. They had nothing to lose, right? You're broadening the player pool, which is for me the massive benefit for these January camps is we get to actually give these guys, even though this camp wasn't as long as previous ones that we were a part of in particular, but you give these guys an opportunity to be seen over a week, 8 days, 10 days, whatever it is. And I think that's really important because you might get some insights when you're around these particular players. Like, I know what the bigger group looks like. I think now that I've seen this personality, I see how they train, I see how professional they are or not professional they are, and I think they'd be a nice fit with the group. It's really, really important, and I love the January camp for that reason.
Did I talk you off the ledge now? Have you come back down?
No, I mean, listen.
Are you still boiling?
Jimmy wants to cut them all. All of them.
I'm not saying cut all of them.
Jimmy wants to, after this game, send them all back to their clubs.
He wants Anthony Hudson off on the bus.
That's the center back one I was just surprised because I thought that
you can't play two inexperienced center backs at the international stage. I do agree. We could have seen Jalen Neal with Aaron Long or Jalen Neal with Zimmerman, but you can't go two.
I agree, Jimmy, with the sandwich, but I also think well, why do we bring them in if they're not ready?
Right.
Why are we bringing
Thank you. You could go down the line with that one.
Well, of course, but
I was like, why? You know how many times I was like, why is Charlie here? Bob, if he's not ready, why is he here?
Hey, I look down the bench. He's tying his shoes. He looks over. He's like, this Davies kid.
No, I mean, I always said that about Heath because, I mean, we all knew Johnny Bornstein was going to play, so I don't even know what the hell.
What do you need to back? Don't open up those wounds.
What do you need a backup for, dude? We got our guy.
There you go, Johnny boy. But I will say, there was plenty of positives in this game. I was really excited about the midfield. Kellen Acosta, nice and steady. Congrats to him for being captain. That's a big honor. His first time with the national team. You got Paxton Aronson, who is his frantic energy is inspiring. He's just all over the place. Eric Williamson, I'm a big fan of Eric's game, and I really like that midfield. We looked like we got a little overrun to start the game, but then as it progressed, we started to settle in and find that rhythm, and I thought it was fine. Eric's savvy in and around the box, his through balls. I love all that little stuff that he does that brings other players into the game and moves the game along.
Yeah.
Paxton for me has a ton of potential. I think we can all see it there.
Yeah.
But it's like, how do we harness his energy? And Brendan's going through this too in a certain level too. How do we, because he's 100 miles an hour all the time on both sides of the ball. Like, dude, if you can just and pick your spots as to when to go like crazy with that type of energy and when to slow it down is going to be a big challenge for him, I think, in his career, because he's had so much success with the energy that he has.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I wanted to say about Paxton, I was talking to Richie Graham, obviously one of the owners and the one who founded the Philadelphia Union Academy. And the one thing that he did say was like, the thing about the Aaronsons, as you can see, is that like they're learning machines, right? They're built to learn. And
growth mindsets.
Yeah. They're kind of these guys that are like, take information and then they develop and they keep going. And I think that's, we've played with plenty of guys who you're like, that guy's could be really good. He's not going to be good, but you know, he could be. And where the Aaronsons, you can see where there's just more of like, he was very clear. Like they have this like learning mind.
Their brains suck up everything.
Yeah. They take in that information where, we know plenty of people that were like, you look at them and you're like, dude, I don't know what, or if there's something going on up there, but if there is, and you can make that happen, you can be
the
Aaronsons'
really brainwaves are on another level. But again, I think what Brendan worked on really well is his technical and tactical awareness. Because
were you talking Brendan or Paxton?
I'm saying Brendan. This is how he took steps in.
Just want to make sure that was clear. Yeah.
What Paxton needs to do is following those footsteps. Is if you don't have the physicality when games get super physical, and Brendan, his brother, it was easy for MLS teams to play against him once they understood we're just going to rough him up and he's going to be out of the game. He can't deal with that. But then he got smart, because just like any of the world superstars that we've seen over the past decade, if you can't touch them, then it doesn't matter how strong you are. It's all about your body positioning. And then when you do have the touches, being quick and savvy. And once Paxton learns that you don't need to use your body if your distance is right, then he's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a learning adjustment and a learning curve, which I think he touched on perfectly. His brain is so big at sucking everything in that he will be fine.
He's going to be fine. I agree with you. I think he's going to be fine too. But just for today, just felt when he does, that's the one thing I noticed. When he figures out when to slow it down and speed it up and can actively, and everybody around him on the team knows when he's going to do that as well, he's just going to be that much more effective, because they're going to know how to support him at the right time. Because sometimes if he's going super fast, the rest of the team's like, whoa, dude, tap the goddamn brakes. And then they're ready to go quick, and he maybe wants to slow it down. So he's just got to figure out what's going to happen there. I do want to have
he's 19 though. He is 19. So it's not like, you know, again, I go back
hold him to a high standard as we should. It's a national thing.
And I know you wanted to say something, but for me, when I think about just these pipeline of players being 19, we talk about Cade Cowell. Oh yeah. If you watch Cade Cowell over a season, you're like, okay, if he beats his first man the first time, classic winger, like stereotype, where you're like, oh, he's gonna eat him up all day long. But then if he misses that, he might be one of the least effective players on the field that day until he gets subbed off. And you're like, okay, but the difference is we're bringing in a Cade Cowell with 3 years of professional experience, and he's 19 years old, right?
Right.
Paxton Aronson, a couple of years of professional experience. He's 19 years old. Now he's going to be in Eintracht Frankfurt over the next year. You could see massive growth of guys that are still teenagers, which is at least something to be positive of. Whether they realize that or not is completely different, right? It's the Jose Mourinho thing that I saw online today, which was like, oh, you don't know what these young players are like. They're like melons. You don't know what's on the inside till you open them up, you know, type of thing.
Right. Okay, so Charlie, before I throw it over to you about the front three, I just want to give a shout out to Paul Arriola, because this is his 50th cap ever for the national team. Only 60 players in the history of the program have done that. So congrats to him on hitting that milestone.
Congrats.
But when I watch Paul Arriola play, the dude runs with so much purpose and drives forward and presses the ball. I mean, he presses his ass off, and he always wants the ball, even in tough situations. I'm still a little bit surprised we didn't take him to the World Cup. There's just something about his game whether you like him or not, but there's still something about his game that I appreciate and I
Are you
respect.
saying
It's a little classic. It's a little classic football, Charlie. Jimmy likes a little bit of classic football.
You know what?
To him, you know?
Well, especially
Just
if you
run
have
with purpose.
A little run, diagonal run, because that's the right run to make.
Listen,
you know?
the contrast, especially when you have a Ferreira at the 9 who drops in, you need that verticality, and Areola is willing to do that. Anyway, every time I see him, there's always a little thing that he does. I'm like, that's some big time shit. It might be subtle and it might be nuanced, but there's something about his movement that I appreciate and his desire to get into some tough spots and still want the ball. And I appreciate that he takes on that responsibility. So, Charlie, you know what? I do have a stick on my ass today. I am a bit cranky today, everybody. And it's because I coached the local JV team here, and we should have beaten the team, and we didn't. It was
I knew there was something more.
Listen, it's
okay.
Well, I'm also frustrated, but I will come out and admit that I've done, like, my frustration has started from earlier this morning when we should have won and we didn't, and that might have cost us the league. And now I know it's just JV and I should whatever, but it still matters because I care. Okay, all right, Charlie, go talk to us about.
I love it. You're competitive.
I am. Of course I am.
The front three. In terms of tonight, it was rough. It was rough. I mean, Brendan Vasquez came in as a late sub and was the best of the front three. I mean, that kind of goes to show how rough of a night it was from the attacking three.
Man, he could have scored.
He could have had two. Could have had two tonight. But yeah, I mean, there's not much to say. I don't want to harp on the negatives, so I'll keep it short. We needed more creativity. We needed people to be a little bit more, dangerous in the attacking third by being aggressive. I don't think we were aggressive. I don't think we looked to combine. It was all about kind of individualism. And that's typical for January because everyone wants to show out and the pressure's on. You could see Jesus Ferreira probably was playing with all of that stress and pressure from the national team, the World Cup, and not having, the success that he was hoping for, only playing 45 minutes, everyone coming at him and the national team and Greg Berhalter for choosing him and for playing him. And you could tell he's carrying that. And for a striker, you probably want to use that as motivation anyways, but sometimes it can work in the opposite direction where you're trying too much or trying too many things, not playing simple. Mm-hmm. I think his game has to be simple because he's not a traditional number 9. So it wasn't his sharpest evening.
So I want to jump in. When I watched Ferreira play, the pass that he played to Matthew Hoppe in the first half was chef's kiss. Unbelievable. We should have scored there. Matthew Hoppe should have squared it across the Areola. But what it showed me and demonstrated was that I think we've talked about this before, we probably have ad nauseum, that Ferreira is better as a second striker. And I was kind of pissed again when Anthony Hudson left
in a two-striker system, or as like a coming off the bench second striker.
No. I think that
I like that question, Heath.
Thank you, Charlie. I just want to be clear.
No, it's fair. I appreciate that. Anthony Hudson, he left on Matthew Hoppe, and I had already seen enough of Matthew Hoppe. Like, let's let John Tolkien be the left-sided width there at that point, and let Ferreira play off the shoulder of Brandon Vasquez. I wanted to see what that looked like because I already saw what Hoppe was going to do or not going to do because he takes too many touches, and I'm a little frustrated with him. But I would have been nice to see potentially Ferreira playing in his best spot with a proper number 9 in front of him, and to see if that unlocked anything. And that's all I wanted to say. Go on, Heath.
Oh no, I just wanted a clarification on your question. I didn't have much to say to that, but I agree. Like, I mean, let's talk a little bit more contextually then about players. Was there anybody between the two of you that are like not there yet, not ready? Like, I take Charlie. I take Dwan Jones for example. Do you think that he played well enough in his time to go, well, let's take a flyer on him in the next camp, or let's see how he integrates into the first team? Or do you think he's still got maybe, wait for another call up, perhaps down the line? Maybe it's one of the two competitions this year that he gets a chance to go into. Yeah.
I think he's in the middle. I wouldn't say he's not ready yet, and I wouldn't say, he's ready to be inserted into the first team.
He only got to be top 5 to make the national.
I think he could get into the camp for sure. Because you love the fact that he has the ability to play on the right side and the left. He's a natural right-sided player, but he plays left professionally for the Revolution. So I like that versatility from him, and he's such a physical freak. He's a phenomenon. So, he's working on the tactics, which I think he's done really well. And then that delivery, playing on the left side, getting the delivery right. I think that's where we will see him excel if he finally clicks into place and it's just consistent with the service. So I could see him being in the mix for sure, especially if he has a strong season this year and gets his move to Europe.
Okay, let's say it like this. Of our five, let's say 5 players from this camp that aren't already regulars. If you could bring him into the March camp, who would they be?
Zendejas, because I think he's just
Vasquez. Cade Cal.
If you have to pick,
well, I don't
5.
know. I'm just saying. Well, anybody listening, ISWT Pod, hit us up on Twitter, hit us up in the comments on YouTube right now. Who's your 5 that you would take from this camp?
I like
Paxton.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Jalen Neal.
No, you cannot get called up to the full team when you don't even play for your club team professionally.
I agree with that.
When you haven't played for your club team,
you haven't even played. For the
there's a difference between
first
not
team.
playing and haven't played before. Yeah, I get
both. It's both. You can't get a call.
What about Jonathan Gomez, left back?
No.
Same.
No.
Okay.
All right, not till he gets to a first team.
Okay,
level,
that's fair. Tolkien was solid defensively. I thought. I thought
he was solid defensively, but I still think that there's
yeah.
He's another guy where I'm like, that's a young player, and
it showed.
Again, somebody was telling me today that his high end analytics puts him in like one of the top left backs in the world at his age right now. Like the analytics around his game puts him into that category, and valuation, which you've seen. There's been a few things where he's been in like the top 10 or whatever for young defenders for his age or age group. But future, but not quite there yet.
No.
Okay. So Vasquez, we're seeing here from JJ here, Joshua Johnson, Zendejas, Tolkien, Gaga Slonina, I think is a good shout.
Yeah.
And Jones is his fifth pick. I don't know where I assume Eric Williamson is already established, right?
He really didn't.
But I would love to see him back in March, to be honest.
He wasn't sharp enough in this camp to say I don't think he earned it with his performances to get into of the full team camp. We know what he's capable of. I just don't think he was sharp enough with his performances.
And 5 might be too many. Maybe 3 was more of the magic number, but I just wanted to throw it out there for some of the fringes that are kind of on.
I mean, but if you're talking about Aaron Long and you're talking about Walker Zimmerman, none of these guys are making 2026 World Cup roster. So my whole thing is we should say 5 because it's going to be at least 5 to 10, if not more, that we're seeing over the next couple of years. And I know we're talking about the next camp itself, but eventually these guys that are our national team players right now, like Acosta and Areola and all these guys, I think that window is gone. Now we need them in the short term because they have the experience and they're leaders and they've been great for the national team, but we need that next crop to actually push them out. So I think 5 is a fair argument. Okay.
All right. Is there any ones you want to add then, Heath? I don't know if we got your 5.
I mean, mine were Zendejas. It's I would say I could see Paxton in there only because of the fact that I don't think he's ready to play.
Do you think Paxton Pomacall did well? Because I thought he was one of the better players in that first game.
Yeah, I mean,
let me look at the.
It's good. I'm saying Brandon Vasquez. I'm saying Slonina. I'm saying I'd say Cade Cowell to see where he's at. I think it's a good touch base. I don't think he's quite at that level.
Agreed.
Yet,
I think I liked what Charlie said before with the consistency.
I think he goes into the season, and if he plays really well, we're talking about a summer call up for sure. If he goes from the momentum that he has from the national team and takes that to a more consistent run of form. Cowell's hard for me because he's one that I watch pretty closely, and it's hard for me because I know outside of this game, there's a larger sample size that I'm like, you can see where it is. You can see why Barcelona was interested in him. You could see what he's good. He could be super, super high level player for us someday, or he could be our next Jordan Morris, which could also be really successful or good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it could be Justin Mapp.
I want to throw this out there because I was really pulling for him to play well, and maybe he's just not fit. Or as fit as he'd like to be, but Alan Senora for me just didn't. For a guy that wore the number 10 shirt in the Argentinian, I just didn't take over the game like you'd expect from a number 10. Maybe it's the system, maybe it's the players he's around. I want to give him every benefit of the doubt, but even in those little moments, I'm like, he keeps the ball a little bit, but he turned the ball over in some bad areas over both games and didn't really take his opportunity like I wish he would have. And I was really pulling for him to do that. I wonder where he's going to go. he's a free agent right now. I know he's been linked to Montreal, but I hope he can settle in and get to play and showcase what he's capable of, because you can see it, but he just didn't take the opportunity, and that's a bit unfortunate. Chuck, give me one player that you think didn't take the opportunity, and we probably won't see them for a while, and same with you, Heath, and then we'll take it to break and get into some of the fun news after the break.
I would say
the Champions League knockout phase, Europe's yearly do-or-die battle royale, where winning is all that matters. The knockout rounds begin February 14th and 15th. Stream every match live exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Can I just say something? Alex just wasn't having Charlie's nonsense tonight, dude. He just was like,
cut me off.
Producer Alex is like pretty sure not listening to how I was setting that up. But anyway,
it's cool.
So Chuck, give us your player, and then we'll get into the fun news. So welcome back to the show, everybody.
Thank you. I'd say Matthew Hoppe. He's struggled mightily with the clubs he's been a part of for the past 2 years, and he gets an opportunity in this camp. And I know it's tough to pull yourself out of a bad run of form. It is tough to all of a sudden pick yourself up and say, okay, here's my chance to perform and keep myself in the limelight. It didn't look sharp from him. It looked like he didn't have that burst that we've seen from him in the past. I think this opportunity fell by the wayside.
Yeah. Okay. Heath?
I think that's a fair shout. Again, it's one of those ones where it's like his situation, because of his potential, you're like, we should get him in because it'll help. Might help him get a move by getting a game like this. But at the same time, you're like, not deserving of a call up, and also didn't really make the most of it. There were a couple moments where you're like, oh, I saw a little bit of those glimpses. Yeah. The energy, I think, at times was good, but a little bit of that, like, where have you gone since 18 months ago when I was like super high on you? There's a little bit of a disconnect there. For me, man, it's really hard to say one single player that I think played themselves out. I'm looking through this lineup now.
Yeah, I don't mean to like tread the waters of negativity. It's more just they just didn't take the opportunity, that's now been presented. And now it's just going to be harder. Like, when are you ever going to get a game to get called in at this point? Maybe if we take a mixed squad for the Gold Cup, potentially, I don't know, but
yeah, it's hard because when I think about, again, the weekend when Mihailovic had a fantastic game and Taylor Booth, apparently, I didn't watch the full game, but apparently just put on an entire show from start to finish. You're like, there's people knocking on the door, right? Yeah. Now when you talk about the depth chart, it's I don't know if anybody played themselves out because it was relatively low stakes.
Yeah. Maybe they never played themselves in. Yeah.
But it was more of like, can you get another look? Like, can you get a second call up, one into the first team where, the intensity goes a little higher? I mean, Charlie or Jimmy, were either of your first camps in a January camp?
Yes. Mine was 2005 January camp.
Okay. And at the time, though, January camp probably had 50% of the national team in it, though, right? Like,
it did have quite a number of guys. Yeah.
Maybe it's apples to oranges in terms of comparison, but for you, I mean,
well,
when you went from that first game or your first camp to your second camp, did it make was it a big jump of pressure or intensity or speed?
Yeah. I mean, I had never really been around the Claudio Reynas and the Casey Kellers and those guys that had
topical names you're using.
Well, yes, I know, but then you get it, and the first time I got introduced to them was at a World Cup qualifier, so the stakes are already super high. And
was that your second camp then? Was like January camp and then World Cup qualifier?
Yeah. I was one of the few holdovers, and I was excited about that. But as I mentioned, I think in a previous podcast, I was just there to get experience. I wasn't in the 18-man roster. But it was good. It was good to be around.
Okay. Well, actually, let me stop you there then, Jimmy. Who then from this camp do you bring in for an experience in March?
Well, that's the thing. I think these 5 names. I mean, you want to see them around the group, but it would be good to see Slonina, of course. Zendejas for sure. Obviously he's got a little something. Brandon Vasquez is another one. Those 3. There's something about Jonathan Gomez I like. I think he had some shades of getting forward, and there's something I like. And John Tolkien I like too. So because we have an open spot there, I know Serginho Dest can play on the left side and all that, but we need a little bit of cover for Anthony Robinson, who's a proper left footer. So maybe one of the or two of those guys you could bring in just to get that experience. See, like say you're Tolkien or Jonathan Gomez, and now you get to see Anthony Robinson in person doing his thing. Even at training, then you get to watch him in a game in person, and you're there, and you're just studying how he's supposed to move with the team that is the starter. And just that is so invaluable. All those little learnings just about being around the group and seeing exactly what the team expects from you. Like say you're at a game and Christian Pulisic is checking off of a shoulder to get the ball off of Anthony. Yeah, you can see that on TV, but to actually live it with the group and to understand how he's asking for it and where he wants it, yeah, that is priceless experience. And so when you bring in your younger players to be around that environment, just to see what that looks like, I think it is important to bring them in, even if they know they're not going to play, but they're just going to be a part of it. But I'm sure you guys have had similar experience.
Chuck, what? I mean, we got the JV coach's take on this. Who lost his game today and is in a bad mood right now.
No. It was 0-0, baby.
He's not even going to win. He's not even going to win the league this year, Charlie.
Well, no, we dropped because I don't want to get into it. Don't get me going.
Oh, if Jimmy outs his team right now, or
I'm not outing my
the
team.
JV,
I'm not going to out the team.
Soccer team, they're gonna that they're
I'm not outing that my team.
What did they do wrong today?
We just couldn't finish. It was one of those,
That sounds like a national team. So I'm taking everything.
Yeah, it was 0-0.
Straight on par.
We didn't give up any shots.
Okay.
And the other coach had the audacity to tell me that it was an even game. I'm like, you weren't even in our half, dude. What are you even talking about? Anyway, so yes, I'm a little fired up. And those drop points, because we have some excellent other teams in our league. They steamroll everybody. It doesn't matter.
What'd you do with the lack of goal scoring? Did you sub? Did you go up?
I did. I put one of my better defenders up top to try to make something happen. I think I waited too long. Listen, we don't have to go over this. I'm already living it. I'm in my feelings right now about this. Let's talk about the Copa America, everybody. It's coming to the U.S. in 2024. It just got announced. CONMEBOL and CONCACAF came to an agreement, and the format's going to feature 16 teams in the summer of 2024. 10 from CONMEBOL, all 10 from CONMEBOL, and 6 from CONCACAF. All right. And they're going to be able to qualify via the 2023-24 Nations League tournament. So that's pretty cool. For the women's national teams, CONCACAF has invited the top 4 CONMEBOL national teams to participate in the 2024 CONCACAF W Gold Cup. And that'll be the inaugural edition of this 12-team tournament, which will be played in the United States, which I think is awesome that there's all these different combinations of these two federations working together for both the men and the women's game. But let's talk about how important this tournament is, Chuck, because we don't have World Cup qualifying leading up to 2026. So we need some meaningful games. And I think this is a perfect run-up to make that happen.
You said it. And I just had to open the door just to show that Copa America jersey.
Baby.
You said it, man.
What a time. That was my second camp with the U.S., by the way.
Okay.
What
was your
Copa
first?
America and Venezuela. The first was a friendly ahead of the Gold Cup, where we beat Mexico in the final in Chicago, where Phil Haber scored that volley.
Oh yeah.
So we played a friendly in San Jose against China, and that was my first ever cap.
That was the Jesse Marsh game, right? That was Jesse Marsh.
Jesse Marsh.
Yeah.
Ante Razov played in that one.
I remember that.
Yeah. But
Papa the boys.
the Copa America is no joke. I'll never forget walking out in that first game and looking across at that Argentina side with
oh my God.
Riquelme, Messi, Cambiaso, Crespo, Zanetti, Walter Samuel, Tevez, and I'm thinking, Heinze, this is one of the greatest teams in history. Looking across, and that's who we're playing, our B team, right? Like, one incredible experience. And I swear to God, those, people will say, what are we doing with these players? Those experiences matter. They help you. They allow you to grow and see what your potential is, and also see what how they move, what they do, what their touch is like, how they move in space. That is what gets you to the level that we want to play at. This is going to be an incredible tournament, incredible experience for our players. I can't stress that enough. Everyone should be super jacked. If we ever want to compete for a World Cup and be in a final, be in the semifinals, we have to play teams like this. Whether we get smacked up or whether we have a good, strong half and it gives us confidence and we go, oh, this is how you compete against a Brazil or Argentina, two teams that are typically always competing for a World Cup final. This is what it takes to beat them, because you're going to have to chase all damn game if you give the ball away. It makes you really appreciate possession, that you can't just lump the ball forward. You have to play intentional passes. And guess what? Anyone who comes in contact checking for the ball, you can't lose it. If you lose it, you're either punished right away by a goal, or you're punished by chasing the damn ball in that crazy heat.
Preach it.
So
Preach.
I am hyped for this because it is the best. It is the absolute best.
I'll tell you one thing, Jimmy. If you had Charlie in your locker room for that JV game,
we probably would have won 5-0. To be honest,
you roll out Charlie for that speech.
I needed Charlie at halftime.
I can tell you one thing. Oh boy. I mean, you would run away, dude. You would have run away with the score, but we can't have everything, you know.
No,
but I mean, I truly mean this, because I only played the last game of that Copa America, and that's actually a unique experience for the three of us, because we all played, and Jimmy's got the framed tackle on Messi on his wall, and Charlie was well on his way at that point. But I played the final game against Jesus Ferreira's dad, David Ferreira, who ended up being my teammate. I changed shirts with him. But in that tournament, in that game specifically, I remember knowing Justin Mapp, because he was part of my class, and you mentioned him earlier in the show, being the best one-on-one dribbler I'd ever seen in my entire life, right? He was like, when he was going at the first person.
I know what story you're going to tell. Keep going.
When he was going at somebody, I knew he could beat them. But the way in which Zanetti and Juan Sebastian Verón shut him down in that game, the way in which he basically came over and doubled him up. So every time, it was the first national team that I had seen that was way bigger than us, that took us serious, that they came with a plan. They knew who Justin Mapp was. They brought two over every time. And Zanetti was like, I'll force him over to Verón. Verón was like, let's close him out. And it was the most neutralized I'd ever seen a player that was actually in form. He was a streaky winger, obviously, but he was a player that I was like, you get him one-on-one and he's beaten whoever, right? And I remember thinking, like, I've never seen a tactic happen in a game at the national team level that completely neutralized the guy. It wasn't like he was dribbling and losing it, or like trying too much or whatever. He just could not do anything because there was nowhere for him to go and nothing for him to do. And I remember that being the first step in my mind of going like, oh, okay, this is another level. And like,
he's broken. He's not working because they absolutely just
He wasn't bad. It wasn't like he wasn't completing passes. You know, there's a big difference between like trying too much and like being out of form or whatever, especially for wingers. But it was just like he was literally not in the game at all. You get the ball, play it back. Because every time that he tried to go into somewhere, it was like, no, turn around and go back that way, bud. This way's closed.
Your left foot is off.
Yeah. And that was just like an eye-opener for me, you know, and I was learning a lot in that time from the sideline. I didn't play, but it was just one where I was like, you know, you pick up notes like that and you're like, okay, there's another level to this.
Yeah, and I think we had the Copa America here in the States before in 2016, the Centenario, right? The 100-year anniversary. And the U.S. got to the semifinals. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was in Houston. I was at the game, but I don't remember if it was a quarter or a semi. And they played Argentina, and Messi scored like the sickest free kick, top corner against Brad Guzan. I think it was 4-0 that Argentina ended up winning. But that's just to your point, Charlie, and to your point, Heath, like getting these experiences for this group of players to play in meaningful games against opponents that do make deep runs and win World Cups is incredibly important, because they learn these little things. And even if you're not playing, even if you're watching like Heath was in that first game against Argentina, you still get to learn from just being there and seeing the decisions that are being made and how teams are trying to collapse. And what I found interesting in playing those games too is you kind of realize after the fact, as you're processing the game again, that they're just, when they give you a pass, they're like letting you pass that ball there. Like they're like, nah, it's fine. You can have it there. You don't hurt us there. And that level of tactic and understanding, especially from a defensive team shape thing, is fascinating. It's something I try to get across to my JV team. We're still learning, everybody. All right, so let's talk about the next story. Weston McKennie looks like it's all set and ready to go. He's going to go on loan to Leeds for the rest of the season, and Leeds has an option to buy him for $30+ million. Yeah, exactly right. So Weston McKennie, I'm interested about this. I know that Arsenal was out there and we discussed whether he should go there or to Leeds. But Leeds, if they get relegated, this could be a bad decision. Now, he's only on loan. I guess he could go back to Juve. And Juve now with a 15-point deduction have a lot of work to do to try to get back into Europe. But what are we thinking about this move? Obviously, from a national team perspective, the more reps he can get with Tyler Adams and Brendan Aronson, I'm all for it. But he's going into a real pressure cooker there, Charlie Davies.
He is. I like the move because I just feel there's a lot going on with Juventus right now. And now he's going to be thrust into, he's playing every minute of this loan as long as he's healthy. And it's a good way to judge where he's at. What's his influence in the game? Because he's going to have to be massive for Leeds to stay up in terms of his obviously his aerial prowess on set pieces, if he can score a few, but just the transition game, winning tackles and then going forward. But he's got to be more efficient with the ball. He can't just dribble into spaces, things he can get away with in CONCACAF sometimes. And at times Juve, because teams are dropping so far off, teams are pressuring you. You're under pressure all the time. I love this move from the standpoint of how tough it's going to be, because Leeds, yes, they press a lot, but they're also under pressure. Teams are going after them. They're not sitting back. So sometimes it can be a track meet up and down. So it's a good test for us and for him to see where he is and how he fits into the Premier League.
Okay, Heath, let me tee you up with this thing, because I'm looking at Leeds' last starting 11 in the Premier League. I know they just won in the FA Cup, and congratulations to that for moving on to the next round. But against Brentford, when I look at they got Tyler Adams and Mark Roca in the middle, and then you have Brendan Aronson, Willie Gnonto, Jack Harrison, and Rodrigo. Where does he go? Where does he fit into this? Is it simply just a switch with Mark Roca?
I mean,
it's tough. Like, I don't know.
I mean, he's not gonna go out onto the wings. It could be Gnonto somewhere in there within the three, but it's got to be one of the three. It's not going to be Tyler Adams either, as we know, because that's why Weston McKennie's heading there, right. Because we're getting our boys there. I am a little bit worried generally, because when I think about it, I was having this conversation today about, like, it's amazing how far we've progressed in terms of our player pool and the age that they are, that we've got a Serginho Dest that goes from 1 year of this to Barcelona to AC Milan. That's his trajectory, right? The next club's going to be probably a step back from that, but still a high tier. When you look at Pulisic or Weston McKennie, Schalke grinds it out, ends up going to Juventus, overperforming our expectations, and now he's going to Leeds. At what point does Leeds just become Fulham to us in the way that it always was? Right? It's a club that's fighting relegation. It's taking on the American quality of player that is basing the American quality player based off all of the Americans that played at Fulham, right? Smart, tactically very good, physical, technical, solid across the board. But at what point, is this a bad thing in terms of putting players into that world? Do I think it's good for players to fight relegation at some point in their careers? Absolutely. Is it a place that you go to develop? Absolutely not. It's not a development place, right? It's not.
But they don't play like a relegation team.
I agree with that. They're not Norwich. They're not like,
no.
It's
not like
for the best every week.
You watch teams that are fighting relegation where they bunker. There is no keeping the ball. There's no possession. It is literally counterattack, launch it, throw-ins, corner kicks. It's ugly.
True.
You're not developing.
And now they've spent $100 million. Don't play that way. They've spent $100 million. If they end up closing this deal, it's like, even beyond that at the end of the season. So they're spending money to do it right. My worry is that, not so much is it the right style of play, but what happens if Leeds doesn't break into becoming a West Ham or a Villa or a whoever that can just have a good run for a decade plus, go back to the days of Leeds being one of the bigger clubs in the Premier League? Or is it a reflection on our quality of player that the club that's coming in for him is a team that is, a 3-loss run away from fighting relegation for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I like this move. I like it. I think it's going to be a challenge, Chuck, and I'll let you take it from here. Yeah. But I still wonder how he fits into Jesse's system, because it's going to be a lot different than what Maxi Allegri was running at Juve. And then maybe there's some similarities, because I know that Greg Berhalter obviously had a high pressing system, and it'll feel more national team-esque, and obviously being surrounded by players that are on his team with the US. But I'm still curious about this move. I think I'm all for it, but I'm just kind of curious to see how he fits in and how Jesse utilizes him. But go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah. When you watch Leeds play, though, it's not that they're missing a midfielder. Of course, that will help. They're missing a goal scorer. They are so hopeless in front of goal. You watch them play.
Well, Bamford's starting to go score again, which is good.
But they're missing a somebody they can depend on, because they do generate chances. They create chances. Not that they don't. They just don't have someone who they can consistently finish, that they can depend on. I think that's where Leeds have fallen short, is 1, a goal scorer, and 2, they open themselves up so much. There's got to be more of a balance with the way they play.
But that opening up, Charlie, is still a little bit of that fragility.
Open.
It's a little, but that's my worry is that that's the fragility to me. That's always 50, 60 minutes. You're like, this is a top half of the table team. And then something happens where you're like, this is a team fighting relegation. And you see a very different side, like you said, where it's wide open. You're like, this feels a little bit more systemic than it is just a one-off of a game.
Because you can't just open yourselves up the whole damn game. You have to have balance. You have to defend too and lock it down. And sometimes that goes against your culture and what you're trying to build. But if you want to win games, you have to lock it down and defend at times. You can't keep it open the whole game, because if you are winning, it's 5-4. That's not going to give you consistent results.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting then how Weston kind of plugs in and fills some of those needs, ultimately what you're talking about, because they do need a goal scorer. And I do think he'll help out a lot on set pieces, which obviously alleviates pressure at times. And then defensively, can he do a little bit on that side too? So obviously think it's something to watch for. Can't wait to see Jesse Marsh's official comments when it becomes official, to hear what he's going to do. And then obviously seeing him in the Leeds kit is going to be pretty awesome as he's lining up with Tyler and Brendan. All right, let's get to final thoughts as we close up the show. I'll start. I'll go with Claudio Reyna stepping down. Austin FC. Nobody saw that coming because something had to happen. But yes, another scalp in this whole crappy situation has been taken. And I don't think it'll be the last one. I think Greg will be next on the list of someone that's going to have fallout from this. But whatever you think about McBride stepping down, Ernie Stewart moving on, Claudio Reyna now stepping down, I don't think he's going to take the sporting director role at U.S. men's national team. That would be kind of awkward times a million. So I wonder what happens now with his career and all this type of stuff. But that's a final thought that I'm just going to leave kind of trailing out there, because then it's another situation I'm very curious.
What a final thought that was.
Yeah, my final thought is I agree with you, Jimmy. A lot going on.
Chuck, any final thoughts?
Yeah, my final thought is I look forward to our show tomorrow. And then
Monday,
Charlie.
Monday.
Come on,
you gotta get off the drink.
Get a calendar, dude.
Yeah.
And shout out to my brother JB Davies in the comments. Always
here.
JB Davies asked for your jersey earlier, and you didn't say nothing about it.
Hey, let me get that jersey. Man. Hey, and shout out to the YouTube fam, because they stay here. So I appreciate you guys. I love the comments. Keep them coming. This is good banter. I'll tell you that. I live for this. I live for this podcast.
And I live for you, Charlie Chuckwagon Davies. All right, everybody. That is the end of the show. So on behalf of producer Des, producer Alex, Charlie, Heath, and myself, Jim, Conrad, we appreciate your support as always. And we'll see you on Monday for our next show. Later.
Tomorrow.